Lady Eleanor Ashbourne had perfected the art of invisibility, not the literal sort, though she often wished for it, but the polite, socially acceptable form practiced by overlooked young ladies throughout London. A graceful blend of lowered gaze, quiet voice, and strategic positioning near floral arrangements large enough to swallow her whole. Tonight, she hid beside an especially extravagant spray of hothouse roses at the Harrington Winter Ball. The roses, drenched in perfume and attention, were everything Eleanor was not. "Eleanor," her stepmother snapped, wielding her fan as though it were a weapon. "Stand straighter. You're slouching like an aging governess." Eleanor obeyed, jaw tight. "Yes, stepmother." "Good heavens, speak up. Lord Wexley will be here any moment, and we must present you at your best." "Lord Wexley." Her stomach lurched like a ship in a storm. A man of middling fortune and even middling charm, if one generously labeled a habit of leering as charm. Her stepmother had declared him the only reasonable match available to a girl like Eleanor. A girl like her, quiet, bookish, unfashionably uninterested in simpering. "I don't wish to marry Lord Wexley," Eleanor murmured. Her stepmother's eyes narrowed. "You don't have the luxury of wishing, dear. You have no title, no dowry, and no—" A sudden hush rolled across the ballroom. Then, like flames catching dry tinder, excited whispers ignited. "He's here! Oh heavens! Look! The Duke of Ravensbury! So handsome! Move! I must position Harriet by the refreshments." Eleanor turned despite herself. Adrian Blackthorne, Duke of Ravensbury, strode through the ballroom as though it belonged to him. And perhaps it did. Tall, immaculately dressed, dark hair gleaming under the chandeliers, he was the sort of man who made other gentlemen suddenly wish to improve their posture. He was also, according to every gossip column, the most desired bachelor in England. Dozens of young women brightened like lanterns at his approach. Their mothers leaned forward eagerly, already calculating dowries. Only Eleanor remained still. "He will not even glance my way," she assured herself, and why should he? A duke had no interest in a girl who hid behind flowers, but then, unexpectedly, impossibly, his gaze flicked toward her, just for a moment, just long enough that her breath caught. Then her stepmother seized her elbow. "Stop staring and fix your hair. Lord Wexley is approaching." Eleanor wilted, but fate, or mischief, had other plans for her tonight. The Duke of Ravensbury was hiding behind a potted palm. It was, in his opinion, disgraceful. Dukes did not hide. They commanded, they inherited, they intimidated. They most certainly did not take shelter behind shrubbery. Yet Adrian Blackthorne had been cornered by Lady Beatrice Fairwick 3 times already, and he would be damned before he allowed a 4th ambush. The girl was charming enough, but her mother was a general commanding an entire battalion of expectations, and Adrian had a problem, one far larger than Lady Beatrice. 6 weeks. He had 6 weeks to acquire a fiancée, not a wife. To his profound relief, the will did not demand matrimony, only an engagement, a very public, very believable engagement. Otherwise, his father's estate, including Ravensbury Castle, would pass to his insufferable cousin. Adrian rubbed his temples. He needed someone who would agree to a temporary arrangement, someone sensible, someone discreet, someone who— "I will not marry Lord Wexley." The soft, trembling voice drifted through the leaves of the palm. Adrian stilled. That voice. He leaned just enough to see. Lady Eleanor Ashbourne stood beside her formidable stepmother, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. She wasn't crying, no, she looked too proud for that, but fear flickered in her eyes. Her stepmother's response was sharp. "You will marry him, Eleanor. You have no other offers." Adrian's pulse quickened. A lady who needed escape. A duke who needed a fiancé. It was madness. Utter madness. He stepped forward. "Lady Eleanor," he said smoothly, "forgive the intrusion." Her head whipped around. "Your Grace?" Half the ballroom gasped. Her stepmother nearly choked on her own breath. Adrian ignored them. "I could not help overhearing. You seem to be in need of an alternative." Eleanor blinked, stunned. I beg your pardon." He inclined his head. "Allow me to offer one." Her stepmother surged forward. "Your Grace, surely—" "I am speaking to Lady Eleanor," Adrian said, with a polite edge that froze the older woman in place. He turned back to Eleanor. Would you, he said, and the air seemed to still, pretend to be my fiancé? Silence slammed over the ballroom. Eleanor nearly dropped her fan. I cannot have heard you correctly. You did, he said gently. I need a temporary engagement. You need freedom from an unwanted match. Our incentives align beautifully. Her lips parted. But why me? A slow, genuine smile curved his mouth. Because, Lady Eleanor, you are the only woman in this room who is not hunting me as though I were a prize stag. Color rose in her cheeks, but he wasn't finished. There is one condition, he added softly. She swallowed. A condition? You must reside at Ravensbury for the duration of our arrangement. If you vanish back to London, society will never believe we are truly engaged. She stared at him. Live with a duke. Pretend to be his future duchess, a scandal of breathtaking proportions. Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper. Your Grace. That is quite the condition. Adrian held her gaze, steady and sure. Say yes, Lady Eleanor, and I shall give you your freedom. Her heart pounded, and for the first time in her life she decided to say yes to something outrageously, gloriously impossible. Eleanor had expected the Duke to forget the whole matter by morning. Surely he'd come to his senses. Surely he'd realize he had made a wild, reckless offer to a girl he hardly knew. Surely he'd find some elegant, titled lady far more suited to the role of pretend fiancée than a wallflower with a troublesome stepmother. But at precisely 10 o'clock the next morning, a gleaming Ravensbury carriage arrived at the Ashbourne townhouse. Her stepmother shrieked. Her stepsisters stared, jaws unhinged. Eleanor felt faint. A liveried footman presented an envelope sealed with dark blue wax for Lady Eleanor Ashbourne, from Adrian, Duke of Ravensbury. Her hands shook as she broke the seal. My carriage is at your disposal. If you still agree to the arrangement, allow my driver to escort you to my London residence. If you do not, he will leave without you, and I shall trouble you no further. It was so simple, so final, a single decision that would change everything. Her stepmother lunged for the letter, but Eleanor stepped back. I am going, she said, surprising even herself. What? Her stepmother shrieked, voice climbing into dangerous registers. You ungrateful girl! You will ruin us, ruin you, Eleanor corrected softly, or save myself. And with that she walked out the front door for the first time on her own terms. Ravensbury House was utterly intimidating. Immaculate columns lined the facade. The polished brass knocker gleamed like a challenge. Footmen stood as rigid as statuary. Eleanor smoothed her gloves, desperately wishing for the confidence she'd felt an hour earlier. The butler bowed. Lady Eleanor, His Grace awaits you in the morning room. She followed him through a labyrinth of elegant corridors until... There he was, the Duke of Ravensbury stood at the window, back turned, hands clasped behind him. When he looked over his shoulder, she forgot entirely how to breathe. Lady Eleanor, he said, you came... Yes, I came... His expression softened with something dangerously close to approval. Then our arrangement begins. He motioned toward a small writing desk. An agreement lay on the polished surface, simple, unadorned, and shockingly practical. No romance, no sentiment, just terms. He explained, voice calm and businesslike. You will reside at Ravensbury until the announcement of our engagement has been sufficiently accepted by society. I expect this will require at least 6 weeks. She nodded. You will not be obligated to spend time alone with me, he continued, nor will I presume any right to your person. This is a partnership of convenience, nothing more. Her shoulders loosened. But, he added, and she stiffened again, you must agree to present yourself publicly as my intended. We must convince the world we are compatible. Compatible, Eleanor's face warmed. And in return, she asked? In return, he said quietly, when I release you from our engagement, you will be free to choose your future without interference. No more forced matches. No more threats. A soft, stunned ache bloomed in her chest. No one had ever offered her freedom before. She took the quill. Her hand hovered over the page. Your Grace, she whispered, I will do my best not to embarrass you. He stepped closer. Close enough that she felt the warmth of him, close enough that she forgot she was supposed to be invisible. Lady Eleanor, he murmured, You could never embarrass me. Her breath tangled somewhere between her ribs, and she signed her name. 2 days later, they departed London in the Ravensbury carriage. Eleanor had expected uncomfortable silence. Instead, she discovered the Duke read travel books, adored dogs, and despised society gossip with equal passion. At one point, the carriage hit a rut, sending her tumbling sideways, straight into him. His arm came around her instinctively. Strong, warm, steady. "Oh," she gasped, mortified. "My apologies," he said, though he didn't release her immediately. "Are you hurt?" "No," she whispered, aware of every place their bodies touched. He cleared his throat and eased back, though his gaze lingered on her a heartbeat too long. After that, silence did fall, but it was a different sort of silence, charged, curious, new. Outside the carriage window, the countryside blurred past as Ravensbury drew nearer. Inside, Eleanor tried not to fall for a man she wasn't truly betrothed to, and Adrian tried not to wish she were. The first glimpse of Ravensbury took Eleanor's breath away. The estate rose from the rolling hills like something out of a romance novel she would never have admitted to reading. Tall spires of pale stone, ivy climbing its walls like delicate green lace, and long windows that glowed with warm, golden light, even in the mid-afternoon sun. Eleanor pressed a hand to the carriage window. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Adrian glanced at her, something unreadable flickering through his eyes. "It is home." A quiet pause. For better or worse. The carriage rumbled across the bridge and pulled to a stop at the front steps. A small reception awaited them, several footmen, the housekeeper, a gardener, and a woman with sharp eyes and perfect posture. Adrian stepped out first and extended his hand to Eleanor. The moment she placed her gloved fingers in his, warmth shot through her like a spark. A tiny, wicked voice inside her whispered, "This is not real. Do not forget that." But another voice, a softer, braver one, whispered, "Perhaps it could be." She allowed him to help her down. Mrs. Hargrave, the housekeeper, curtsied deeply. "Your Grace, Lady Eleanor." "Welcome home. Home?" The word trembled inside her like a delicate thread wanting to be pulled. Adrian nodded. "Mrs. Hargrave, please see that Lady Eleanor is shown to the Rose Suite." A murmur rippled through the staff, subtle but unmistakable. The Rose Suite, it was apparently significant. Mrs. Hargrave's eyes warmed with rare approval. "Very good, Your Grace." Eleanor blinked. "The Rose Suite?" Adrian cleared his throat. "Traditionally, the future Duchess of Ravensbury resides there." Her heart stopped. Completely. Utterly. I see," she managed, though her voice sounded faint to her own ears. "It is appropriate," he said, "too controlled, too careful. For the sake of appearances, of course. Appearances." Her heart restarted, slower this time. Inside Ravensbury Castle, the Rose Suite was larger than the entire Ashbourne townhouse. Soft pink wallpapers with golden vines patterned across them, rose-carved moldings, a canopy bed draped in silk, and a balcony overlooking the gardens. Eleanor turned in a slow circle. "This cannot be real." "It is real," Adrian said quietly from the doorway. He had followed her up, not intrusively, simply ensuring she arrived safely. Gentle, steady, too steady. She felt herself wobbling. "I hope it meets your needs," he added. "If there's anything you wish to change, you need only ask." She spun toward him. "Change? Adrian, Your Grace, this room is—" "It's only temporary," he reminded her gently. "A necessary illusion." The words punctured her exhilaration like a pin to a balloon. "Of course," she murmured. He hesitated, as though wanting to say something. More. But then he caught himself. "I'll leave you to rest after the journey. Dinner is at 7. And... Eleanor?" Her name on his lips sent a warm shiver through her. "Yes?" "You have nothing to fear here. A pause, least of all from me." He left before she could respond, the door clicking softly shut. Eleanor sat on the edge of the bed, pressing a hand to her fluttering chest. Nothing to fear. Not even him. If only that were true. Dinner at Ravensbury was unlike any meal Eleanor had ever attended. The dining room was large, elegant, and lit with hundreds of candles that cast a warm glow over the long mahogany table. She'd expected a formal, stiff atmosphere. Instead, she found warmth. Adrian, shedding the stiffness of London society, seemed almost relaxed. He poured her wine, asked about her journey, and listened, truly listened, to her replies. At one point, when she laughed unexpectedly at something he said, he froze, surprised, then fascinated. "I've never heard you laugh like that," he said softly. She immediately ducked her head, mortified. "I'm sorry." "Don't be." His voice was low, sincere. "I'd like to hear it more often." Heat flooded her cheeks. "This is pretend. This is all pretend. And yet—" When his finger brushed hers as they reached for the same dish, a spark leapt between them so sharp she gasped. He withdrew politely, but his eyes held hers a moment too long. It was the kind of moment that could ignite something dangerous, something real. Later that evening, Eleanor stood on her balcony, staring at the moonlit gardens and trying desperately to calm her racing heart. She had come here for freedom, for an escape, for a bargain. Not for a duke whose smile unraveled her, not for a pretend engagement that felt too dangerously close to longing, not for a home she might grow to love. She was not supposed to want any of this. A knock sounded at her door, her breath caught. "Come in?" The door creaked open. Adrian stood there, still in his evening attire, the moonlight turning his dark hair silver at the edges. "Forgive the hour," he said softly. "I wanted to check that you were comfortable. Tomorrow will be long." She nodded. "Thank you, Your Grace." He hesitated. "Then, Adrian," he murmured, "when we are alone." Her heart somersaulted. "Adrian," she whispered back. He exhaled, slow, controlled, but she saw a flicker of something raw in his eyes. He stepped back. "Good night, Eleanor." "Good night, Adrian." As the door clicked shut, she pressed a hand to her burning cheeks. The arrangement was supposed to protect her, so why did it suddenly feel like the most dangerous decision of her life? Eleanor awoke the next morning to the soft chime of a maid tapping gently at her door. "Good morning, my lady. His Grace requests your presence for breakfast in the conservatory." Breakfast, with the Duke, alone. Her pulse fluttered like a trapped bird. She dressed quickly in a pale blue morning gown, simple, but one that made her feel a little braver, and made her way through the quiet corridors of Ravensbury. The conservatory was flooded with morning light, glass panes arching overhead like the ribs of a cathedral. Sunlight poured across the tiled floor and bathed the plants in gold. Adrian stood among the greenery, sleeves rolled up, inspecting a lemon tree with the concentration of a scholar studying an ancient manuscript. He looked unexpectedly human, unexpectedly touchable, alarmingly attractive. He turned as she approached. "Good morning, Eleanor." Her name on his lips made her heart skip. "Good morning, Adrian." He smiled, not the polite, socially acceptable curve of lips he wore in London, but something warm and real and slightly sleep-rough. "Come," he said. "There's something I should have explained sooner." The words prickled her nerves. Her smile faltered. "Is something wrong?" Instead of answering, he gestured to a small breakfast table nestled between climbing vines. They sat. Her tea trembled slightly in her hands. Adrian watched her a moment, then exhaled, as if preparing for a duel. "I owe you honesty," he began. "There is more to my arrangement, more to the urgency, than I initially told you." Her stomach tightened. "More?" He nodded once. "My father's will," he said slowly, "contains a clause so eccentric it borders on farce. It states that I must be engaged, publicly, convincingly engaged, before my 30th birthday. She blinked. "But everyone knows that part?" "Yes." His jaw clenched. "But the full clause reads, engaged to a woman of unimpeachable character, who has never courted scandal, who bears no history of schemes or ambition toward titles." Eleanor's breath froze. Adrian continued quietly, "Every woman of the ton who has chased me for years is ineligible." She stared. "It disqualifies fortune hunters, schemers, social climbers, notorious flirts. Anyone who has appeared in gossip columns, anyone with even a whisper of impropriety." Her mind raced, and then, slowly, painfully, she understood. "You chose me," she whispered, "because I am forgettable." His eyes widened in a flash of alarm. "No, Eleanor, because I am quiet, invisible. A girl with no scandal, no history, no reputation worth gossiping about. Eleanor, stop. His voice sharpened, desperate. That is not why. Her throat tightened. Is it not? He pushed back from the table so abruptly his chair scraped the floor. In 2 long strides he was beside her. He dropped to a knee. A duke, kneeling before a wallflower. Look at me, he said, voice low and fierce. She looked. I chose you, he said, because you were the only woman in that room who spoke with honesty. The only woman who wasn't playing a game. The only woman whose words were meant for herself, not for the world watching. Her breath shook. You stood up to your stepmother, he continued. You defended your own future. You were brave even when terrified. And you took my ridiculous offer not for gain or ambition, but for freedom. He paused, searching her face. I chose you, he repeated softly, because you are the first woman in years who made me feel something real. Silence fell, thick, heavy, heart-stopping. Eleanor's voice trembled. But your inheritance, the will, it was not merely the engagement that mattered. No, he admitted, the woman matters too. And I, she said slowly, pain prickling behind her ribs, fit the requirements. You exceed them. Her lips parted. He lifted a hand, hesitated, and then gently, reverently touched her cheek. You are not forgettable, he whispered. You are the first person I've met who sees me, not the title. The touch burned her in the sweetest way, but still, you should have told me sooner, I know, and I am sorry. His thumb brushed her cheekbone, a touch light as breath. I feared you would refuse. Her heart ached, because part of her wanted to refuse now, and part of her wanted to fall into him and never look back. I need to think, she whispered. He swallowed. Of course, he stood slowly. Reluctantly, when he stepped back, she felt the loss like a chill. Take all the time you need, he said quietly. But Eleanor. She looked up. I do not want to pretend fiancé anymore. Her heart stopped. I want you. Eleanor did not find peace that morning. She wandered the halls of Ravensbury, trying to quiet the storm Adrian had unleashed inside her, but his words followed her like shadows. I do not want to pretend fiancé anymore. I want you. What was she supposed to do with that? She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her heartbeat flutter like a startled bird. She needed clarity. She needed calm. What she got instead was Mrs. Hargrave. The housekeeper intercepted her outside the library with an approving look that made Eleanor startle. Good morning, my lady. If you require assistance preparing the guest list for your engagement party, I'd be happy to. My what? Mrs. Hargrave blinked. Your engagement party, of course. His Grace informed the staff that preparations should begin immediately. Eleanor nearly swallowed her own tongue. He what? Mrs. Hargrave's expression warmed. We are all quite pleased. His Grace has not smiled this often in years. Eleanor flushed. I see. I'll fetch the ledgers, the housekeeper said briskly. We'll begin after luncheon. Before Eleanor could protest, Mrs. Hargrave swept away, humming. Eleanor stood frozen. Engagement party. Smiling Duke. Staff already convinced. This pretend engagement was beginning to feel terrifyingly real in every direction. She fled to the garden for air. Ravensbury's gardens stretched like an emerald tapestry behind the castle, dotted with fountains and hedges. Eleanor followed a winding path, inhaling the crisp air, until she reached a secluded rose arbor. A voice drifted through the archway. Adrian. She stiffened. He was speaking with the gardener, sleeves rolled up again, shirt slightly rumpled, looking more like a myth than a man. The gardener nodded deferentially. Aye, Your Grace, we'll trim the west hedges, before the party. Another mention of a party. Another twist in Eleanor's stomach. The gardener left, and Adrian turned, just in time to see her standing in the arch's shadow. For a long moment, they simply looked at each other. Then his expression gentled. Eleanor, may I join you? She nodded, because her voice had apparently abandoned her. They stepped beneath the rose arbor together. The light fell in dapples between the leaves, the scent of roses warm and dizzying. Adrian cleared his throat. You left breakfast rather quickly. I needed air. His jaw tightened. I upset you. Not upset, she murmured, confused, overwhelmed. I don't know what you expect of me. Nothing you do not wish to give, he said immediately. She bit her lip. But you said, he lifted a hand, gently, cautiously, and brushed a loose curl from her cheek. When I said I wanted you, he said softly, I meant it. But wanting is not demanding. Her heart skittered. I only meant, he exhaled. Pretending we are engaged feels increasingly difficult. Every time I speak to you, I forget this isn't real. Eleanor's breath caught. Adrian. He looked down as though embarrassed. Forgive me. I shouldn't say such things, not while you are still deciding. Silence stretched between them, and then, very softly, because she was tired of being afraid, Eleanor whispered, What, exactly, feels difficult? His head lifted sharply, and now his voice was barely a rasp. Being near you. Her pulse thundered. Without thinking, she stepped closer. Just a fraction. Just enough that her sleeve brushed his. His breath hitched. Eleanor. His voice was warning and plea all at once. If you move closer, I cannot promise I will behave as a fake fiancé should. She froze. Her next breath trembled. I only meant, she said softly, that if we are to convince society, perhaps we should practice. It was bold, reckless, very unlike her. Adrian stared at her. Then, with agonizing slowness, he lifted her hand in his. Practice what? He asked, exactly. Her gaze dipped to their joined hands. We must look convincing, she whispered. And how, he murmured. Shall we accomplish that? Eleanor swallowed. Perhaps you could teach me. He drew in a sharp breath. Then he stepped closer, just one step, but it brought him entirely within her orbit, the heat of him enveloping her like a forbidden luxury. Eleanor, he said, voice low and molten, if I teach you how a true fiancé behaves, I will not be capable of pretending. Her heart thrashed helplessly. I don't want you to pretend, she confessed in a rush. Not in that moment. He went utterly still. Then, Adrian lifted her hand to his lips. He didn't kiss it, he simply held it there, his breath warm against her skin, his eyes locked on hers with a hunger so gentle it stole her breath. This, he whispered, is how a man looks at the woman he intends to marry. Her knees nearly gave. And if I were to kiss you, his voice dropped lower, rougher. There would be nothing pretend about it. Her lips parted. Adrian. But before their world could tilt any further, a distant shout shattered the moment. Your Grace! A footman called breathlessly from beyond the rose arbor. Forgive me, it's urgent, Adrian swore softly under his breath, releasing her hand with visible reluctance. I'll return, he promised. Don't go far. And then he was gone, leaving Eleanor trembling among the roses, her heart no longer sure what was pretend, and what was becoming devastatingly, uncontrollably real. Eleanor had barely calmed her heartbeat by the time she returned to the castle. She was halfway down the main corridor, still thinking of Adrian's breath on her hand, when a shrill, delighted voice rang through the entrance hall. Adrian, my dearest, you impossible man, you did not tell me you were to be engaged. Eleanor froze. No, please, no. But yes. Stepping into the hall, she saw Adrian at the foot of the grand staircase, shoulders tensed, jaw clenched, and in front of him stood Lady Saraphina Rosedale. Tall, stunning, impeccably dressed in lavender silk that shimmered like moonlight. Her golden curls cascaded in perfect ringlets. Her gloved hands were clasped dramatically against her heart, and her gaze landed on Eleanor like a hawk spotting a mouse. Oh, Saraphina said with sugary brightness. You must be the fiancé, Eleanor curtsied, summoning every scrap of dignity she had. Yes. Lady Eleanor Atwood. Saraphina's smile sharpened, becoming a blade wrapped in lace. How charming. Truly. Adrian stepped forward quickly, as if fearing what Saraphina might say next. Saraphina, I was not expecting you, obviously. She tilted her head. If you had been, you would have sent word, or at least warned your poor bride-to-be that I exist. Eleanor stiffened. Adrian swore softly under his breath. Saraphina, no, she interrupted, waving a delicate hand. I merely came to congratulate you, and to see with my own eyes whether this engagement is real. She gave Eleanor a slow, assessing sweep, or a very elaborate joke. Eleanor felt heat crawl up her neck, but before she could respond, Adrian stepped between them just slightly, subtle but unmistakably protective. "It is very real," he said firmly. Saraphina's expression faltered for a heartbeat, just a heartbeat. Then the mask returned, smoother than ever. "Well, then," she said sweetly, "you must both allow me to stay. After all, what kind of old friend would I be if I didn't celebrate such a momentous occasion?" Eleanor blinked. "Stay? Here? Of course." Saraphina smiled triumphantly. "I'm sure there's a guest room. Or perhaps you can give me a room near yours, Adrian. For convenience." Eleanor felt something ugly and sharp in her stomach. Adrian inhaled slowly, too slowly. "Saraphina, this is hardly wonderful." Saraphina clapped her hands, not listening. "I'll have my maid bring up my luggage." "Your luggage?" Eleanor echoed. "Oh, yes, all 3 carriages." Adrian nearly choked. Eleanor almost pitied him. Almost. Saraphina glided toward the staircase, pausing only to offer Eleanor a bright, pitying smile. "Don't fret, darling. I shan't be any trouble, and perhaps I'll even teach you a thing or two about managing a duke." With that, she ascended the stairs like a conquering queen. Eleanor stood still, pulse hammering. Adrian exhaled a long, exhausted breath. "I am so incredibly sorry." Eleanor folded her arms, lifting a brow. "She seems fond of you." Adrian's horror was immediate. "She is not. She did arrive uninvited. I did not tell her to come," he insisted. "And she knows you very well," Eleanor said lightly, though her chest felt tight. Adrian turned to her fully, voice low and earnest. "I want you, not her. I have never wanted her." Eleanor's breath snagged, but their moment shattered, again, when the butler approached, flustered. "Your Grace, Lady Saraphina has requested a tour of the castle, and tea, and a list of the engagement party guests, immediately." Adrian closed his eyes as though praying for patience. Eleanor bit back a laugh. "You should go. Before she reorganizes the staff." He opened his eyes and looked at her, really looked at her, his gaze softening. "After this ordeal, we will speak again. About earlier." Eleanor's stomach flipped. She nodded. Adrian left with the butler, resigned to his fate. And Eleanor stood in the middle of the hall, watching him disappear, feeling 2 things at once: a growing jealousy she wasn't sure she had the right to feel, and a growing certainty that the pretend engagement had never been more fragile, because Lady Saraphina Rosedale was not here to celebrate. She was here to win, and Eleanor was beginning to realize she was no longer playing pretend with her own heart. Eleanor discovered rather quickly that Lady Saraphina possessed 3 remarkable talents: entering a room at the exact moment she was least wanted, speaking in a tone that was somehow both sweet and insulting, making Eleanor doubt everything she thought she knew about being a duke's fiancée. It took less than an hour for Saraphina to establish herself as a menace. By afternoon tea she had already rearranged the seating so she sat beside Adrian, informed Eleanor that pale blue was tragically unflattering on her, declared that she and Adrian were practically raised together. "He used to chase me through these very halls, darling," corrected Eleanor's tea etiquette, and exclaimed, loud enough for the footman to hear, "Oh, Adrian, remember when you told me you'd never marry unless it was for passion?" Eleanor nearly dropped her teacup. Adrian nearly strangled himself on a biscuit. "Saraphina," he said tightly, "that was 10 years ago." She fluttered her lashes. "Memory is a precious thing." Eleanor cleared her throat. "Indeed, though perhaps some memories are better left buried." Saraphina's smile faltered, only for a second, but Eleanor saw it, a small victory, yet satisfying. Adrian glanced at Eleanor then, something warm flickering in his eyes as though he'd noticed her growing confidence. He liked it. He liked seeing her hold her ground. That, more than anything, sent a thrill through her. After tea, Saraphina linked her arm through Adrian's without warning. "Walk with me," she declared. "I simply must see the West Garden again." Eleanor opened her mouth to politely excuse herself. Saraphina was faster. "Oh, Eleanor, darling," she cooed. "You look a bit pale. Perhaps rest while Adrian and I catch up." Eleanor felt her spine stiffen. Before she could reply, Adrian spoke, calmly, firmly. If we walk, Eleanor comes with us. Saraphina blinked, stunned. Eleanor's pulse stumbled. Adrian offered his arm to her, not Saraphina, her. She slipped her hand through his, warmth blooming up her arm. Saraphina trailed behind them, her expression tightening with every step. Adrian lowered his voice, for Eleanor alone. Courage, he murmured, lips close to her ear. You're doing beautifully. Her breath caught. Saraphina, several paces behind, snapped. What are you whispering about? Adrian didn't miss a beat. Private matters, Saraphina sputtered. Eleanor almost smiled. When they reached the rose arbor, Saraphina gasped dramatically. Oh, how romantic. Adrian, do you remember when you nearly kissed me beneath these roses? Adrian's reaction was immediate. He stopped walking, turned, looked Saraphina dead in the eye. That never happened. Saraphina blinked. But I distinctly recall. You imagined it, he said coolly. Eleanor almost choked on her own breath. Saraphina's smile twitched. Well, Saraphina said, adjusting her gloves, I suppose your memory has grown poor. Or, Adrian said, voice dangerously calm, I now have better things to remember. Eleanor's cheeks flamed. Saraphina's eyes narrowed into slits. Moments later, the three resumed walking, but Saraphina's gown snagged on a thorn. She gave a dramatic shriek and yanked her foot free, and stumbled forward, right toward Adrian. But Adrian didn't catch her. He stepped back, leaving Saraphina to flail, and Eleanor, without thinking, reached out to steady her. Saraphina froze in Eleanor's grasp, humiliation flashing in her eyes. I had it under control, she muttered. Eleanor politely released her. Of course, Adrian didn't hide the satisfaction in his voice. Are you certain you're comfortable staying for the engagement festivities, Saraphina? They can be quite overwhelming. Saraphina glared daggers. I wouldn't miss them. Later that evening, Eleanor retreated to her guest chamber to escape Saraphina's barbs. She pressed her hands to her flushed cheeks, trying to quiet her racing thoughts. Adrian had defended her, chosen her, watched her, whispered to her. He had acted like a man in love. A knock interrupted her spiraling thoughts. Eleanor? Adrian's voice rumbled softly. She opened the door. He stood there in the dim corridor, shirt slightly unbuttoned, hair tousled from running his hands through it. Probably thanks to Saraphina. He looked tired and entirely too handsome. May I come in? He asked quietly. Her breath hitched. Of course. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. Eleanor, he said softly, I need to ask you something. She swallowed. Yes? He moved closer, slowly, giving her time to step away. She didn't. He lifted his hand, brushing a finger down her cheek, sending shivers racing through her. Are you jealous? He murmured. Her breath stopped. You don't need to lie, he whispered. I would very much like it if you were. Her heart thundered so hard she thought he might feel it. Adrian's voice deepened. Because I was jealous first. She stared up at him, stunned. Adrian. He leaned down, breath warm against her temple. I cannot pretend anymore, he said softly. Not with you, not after today. The world tilted. Her knees weakened, and then... A sharp, purposeful knock rattled the door. Adrian? Saraphina's voice trilled from the hallway. Are you in Miss Atwood's room? How inappropriate. Eleanor froze. Adrian cursed under his breath. Open this door at once, Saraphina commanded. Eleanor's heart dropped. Adrian turned to her, eyes fierce. Eleanor, he whispered urgently. If she finds us like this, she'll destroy everything. He reached for her hand. Do you trust me? Eleanor's breath froze in her lungs. Saraphina's sharp knocking echoed through the room again. Adrian, open this door or I shall assume the very worst. Adrian muttered something dark and thoroughly unducal under his breath. Then he turned to Eleanor, eyes fierce, voice low and urgent. Eleanor, do you trust me? She nodded before her mind could catch up with her mouth. Yes, relief, raw and warm, flashed in his eyes. Good, he murmured, squeezing her hand. Because what happens next may look reckless, or foolish, or utterly mad, but I swear it is for us. Us The word crashed through her like thunder. Saraphina's fist struck the door again. "I am coming in!" Adrian walked to the door in 3 long strides, and to Eleanor's absolute horror, flung it open himself. Saraphina nearly toppled into the room. She caught her balance, eyes gleaming with triumphant fury. "Aha, I knew, Saraphina," Adrian interrupted smoothly. "What precisely do you think is happening?" She blinked, thrown off course. Well, a gentleman in a lady's chamber after dark." He stepped closer, forcing her back into the hall. "I am not merely any gentleman," he said coolly, "and Eleanor is not merely any lady." Seraphina's lips thinned. "You know how this looks." "Oh, indeed," Adrian said pleasantly. "It looks exactly as it should." Eleanor's heart lodged somewhere near her throat. Seraphina's eyebrows shot up. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means," Adrian said, voice carrying down the corridor, "that if I wish to speak privately with my fiancé, I shall do so, without requesting your approval." Eleanor inhaled sharply. Seraphina went pale, then puce, then both at once. "That is highly improper, Your Grace." "Then call the gossip rags," Adrian said lazily. "Tell them the Duke of Ravensbury spoke to his intended bride behind a partially open door." He swung the door wider, revealing Eleanor, but at a safe, unscandalous distance. "See, no impropriety," he said with a maddeningly smug smile. "But you were shouting accusations, which is improper. Shall I have the staff carry you to your room so you may calm yourself?" Seraphina gasped like a woman mortally wounded. "You insufferable! Lady Seraphina," he said sharply, Duke sharply, "go to bed." No one disobeyed that tone, not even her. With a furious swish of lavender silk, she spun and stormed away down the hall. Adrian shut the door behind her. Silence fell. Then Eleanor exhaled a laugh, half nerves, half disbelief. "You handled that brilliantly." Adrian leaned back against the door, raking a hand through his hair. "That," he said, "was not brilliant. That was desperation." She blinked. "Desperation?" He looked up, meeting her eyes with a rawness she'd never seen from him. "Yes," he said simply, "desperation. Because the thought of her causing you distress, of her marching in here and declaring you compromised, of her trying to ruin this." He let out a breath. "I couldn't bear it." Her heart twisted. "Adrian." He pushed off the door and crossed the room to her. Slowly this time, carefully, as though approaching something breakable. When she pounded on that door, he said softly, "I realized something." Eleanor swallowed. "What?" "That I don't want you as my pretend fiancé." He took her hand. "I want you as my real one." Her breath caught. Everything inside her went still. He lifted her hand, pressing it against his chest, right over his pounding heartbeat. "Eleanor Atwood," he murmured, "I want to court you properly. I want to kiss you without fear someone will shout through a door. I want to hold you because it is allowed, not because we're pretending it must be." Heat flooded her cheeks. His thumb brushed over her knuckles, gentle and reverent. "I want to marry you," he whispered. "Not for convenience, not for duty, for every impossible reason I shouldn't." She trembled. "Adrian, you barely know me." He smiled faintly. "On the contrary. I know you dislike overbrewed tea. You hum when you concentrate. You try to hide your laugh when it snorts, and you're brave even when you think you're not. And," he stepped closer, breath brushing her cheek, "you look at me as though I am not a duke or a prize, but a man." Her eyes stung. He leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "And God help me, I cannot stop wanting to be that man for you." Eleanor's pulse became a thunderous, impossible thing. "Adrian." He cupped her cheek, slowly, reverently, but he didn't kiss her. He paused, his forehead resting lightly against hers. "I won't cross a line you're not ready for," he murmured. "When I kiss you, truly kiss you, I want it to be because you asked me to." Her breath trembled out of her. And then, "I want you to," she whispered. Adrian stilled. His breath hitched, almost pained. "Eleanor," he rasped, "if I kiss you now, I will not be able to stop at one." She closed her eyes. "Then don't stop." A low, rough sound escaped him. Half groan, half surrender. His hand slid to her waist. Her fingers curled against his chest, and Adrian Ravensbury, Duke of Ravensbury, finally, closed the distance between them. His lips touched hers. Slow, deep, devastating. The world vanished, the air, the room, the castle, everything except him. Her first kiss, warm and breathtaking, wrapped around her like a promise, like a beginning. When they finally parted, breathless and trembling, Adrian rested his forehead against hers again, voice hoarse. "Eleanor," he whispered, "tell me this is real." She smiled through the dizzy glow of it all. "It's real," she breathed. "More real than anything has ever been." His eyes closed in relief. And then a scream echoed from down the hallway, high, dramatic, unmistakably Saraphina. "What now?" Eleanor murmured. Adrian sighed. "Whatever it is, I sincerely doubt we will enjoy it." Eleanor and Adrian stepped into the corridor to find Lady Saraphina dramatically draped over the banister like a heroine in a tragic play. "Oh, Adrian!" she wailed. "Something dreadful has happened." Adrian pinched the bridge of his nose. "Saraphina, it's midnight. That is precisely when dreadful things happen." Eleanor fought the urge to sigh. Adrian did not bother to hide it. "What," he said flatly, "has occurred?" Saraphina pointed down the stairs with a trembling hand. "Someone has stolen my necklace." Eleanor blinked. "Your necklace?" "My diamond choker," Saraphina cried, clutching her throat theatrically. "The one with the rose crest, Adrian's family crest. You gifted it to me years ago." Adrian stiffened. "I did not gift it. My mother lent it. Briefly." Saraphina sniffled. "Well, it's heirloom quality. Practically mine." Eleanor tried not to choke. "Who would steal it?" she asked gently. Saraphina fixed her with a tremulous, tragic stare. "I have my suspicions." A prickle ran down Eleanor's spine. "Oh?" Adrian said coolly. "And whom do you suspect?" Saraphina's gaze slid, slowly, deliberately, to Eleanor. "I say this with the greatest reluctance," Saraphina whispered, "but it must be said. A young woman, new to society, uncertain of her place, desperate to impress a duke, might find herself tempted." Eleanor went still. The corridor was suddenly too quiet. Adrian's expression turned to ice. "Saraphina," he said softly, dangerously, "you are accusing my fiancé of theft." "It is not an accusation," she simpered. "It is an observation." The necklace vanished shortly after she arrived. "Actually," said a quiet voice from behind them, "Lady Saraphina misplaced it." All three turned. Mrs. Hargrave, the housekeeper, held a small velvet box. Saraphina blanched. "I found this in your bath," Mrs. Hargrave continued calmly, "right beside a spilled bottle of rosewater." Eleanor bit her lip to stop a laugh. "Adrian did not," Saraphina sputtered. Well, it must have slipped." "Yes," Adrian said lightly, "slipped right off your vanity, rolled all the way into the bath, and climbed into a velvet box." Saraphina's jaw dropped. "This is a relief," Eleanor said sweetly. "For a moment I feared you suspected me." "Suspect you?" Saraphina echoed, aghast. "I would never—" "Lady Saraphina," Mrs. Hargrave cut in, voice gentle but firm, "shall I place this back in your room?" "Please," Saraphina whispered, mortified. Mrs. Hargrave left with the box. Eleanor turned to find Saraphina staring daggers at her. "You think you've won," Saraphina hissed. "Won what?" Eleanor asked softly. "Adrian is not a prize. He is mine." Saraphina spat. Eleanor stayed perfectly calm. "He does not appear to agree." Saraphina stepped closer, eyes gleaming with fury. "You think you're safe because he kisses you? Because he defends you?" She leaned in, voice dripping venom. "You are nothing to the ton. One rumor, just one, and they will shred you." Eleanor stiffened. Saraphina smiled, triumphant. "And I know exactly which rumor to spread." Before either of them could speak, Adrian moved. He stepped between the two women, shoulders squared, voice cold as winter. "Saraphina, enough." She laughed bitterly. "You can't stop society." "I can," Adrian said calmly, "because I will make an announcement tomorrow that will render any rumor you attempt pointless." Eleanor's heart jerked. "What announcement?" He turned, took her hands in his, and said that our engagement will be made official, public, absolute. Eleanor's breath caught. Saraphina's face drained of all color. "You wouldn't," she whispered. Adrian looked at her evenly. "Try me." Saraphina stormed off down the corridor, fury radiating off her in waves. Silence settled. Eleanor stared at Adrian, chest tight. You didn't have to do that for me. He stepped closer, fingertips brushing her cheek. I didn't do it for you, he murmured. I did it because I want you, because I will not let her or anyone hurt you. And because I meant every word I said earlier. Her pulse fluttered dangerously. He lowered his forehead to hers. You're mine, he whispered. If you want to be... Her breath trembled. I do. Adrian exhaled shakily, eyes closing in relief. Then he kissed her, soft, lingering, full of devotion so fierce she felt it in her bones. A kiss of promise, a kiss of choice, a kiss that made the world tilt. When they finally broke apart, his thumb brushed her jaw. Tomorrow, he murmured, everything changes. Eleanor smiled, dizzy and glowing. I'm ready. But as Adrian walked her back to her door, neither noticed the shadow lurking at the end of the hall. Saraphina, eyes glinting with dangerous calculation. She was not finished, not even close. Morning arrived with a kind of dreadful, trembling anticipation. Eleanor felt it before she even opened her eyes. The air in Ravensbury Castle buzzed, like a storm gathering. Maids hurried. Footmen rushed past with trays. Mrs. Hargrave supervised the placement of fresh flowers in every corridor, and somewhere, faintly, Eleanor could hear Saraphina's sharp, imperious voice barking orders at people who did not work for her. Eleanor dressed slowly, trying to calm her nerves, but her hands shook as she fastened the last button of her gown. Today was the day. Adrian was going to make their engagement official. Not pretend, not temporary, real. Her heart fluttered wildly. What if she wasn't enough? What if the ton whispered? What if Adrian regretted this when society turned sharp and cruel? A soft knock sounded at her door. Eleanor? Adrian's voice. She opened the door, and forgot how to breathe. He stood before her in full formal attire, black coat perfectly tailored, ivory cravat pristine, dark hair neatly combed yet still rebelliously tousled. He looked every inch the Duke of Ravensbury, yet his eyes softened the moment he saw her. You look beautiful, he murmured. She flushed. I feel terrified. He stepped inside and closed the door behind him. Then let me terrify you less, he said softly. And he reached for her hands. Elle, listen to me. His voice dropped to a low, steady rumble. The ton is not a monster. It only becomes one when someone directs its claws. He hesitated. And Saraphina intends to... Eleanor swallowed. I know. But she will fail. His thumb brushed her skin. Because I will not allow her to use you as a weapon against me, and because we are going to face society together. Her heart warmed, steadying. I trust you, she whispered. He exhaled as if those 3 words dissolved all his tension. Good. Hold on to that, especially once we go downstairs. By late morning, the grand foyer was transformed. The Ton's elite had gathered faster than gossip in a ballroom, ladies in shimmering gowns, gentlemen in crisp coats, feathers, jewels shaped like feathers. It was all there. Eleanor descended the staircase on Adrian's arm, her breath shallow as eyes turned toward them. Whispers rippled like wind through tall grass. There she is. That's the Atwood girl. She doesn't look scandalous. I heard she stole a necklace. No, I heard she compromised the Duke. No, he compromised her. That I believe. Eleanor's cheeks burned. Adrian's grip on her arm tightened protectively. Do not look down, he murmured. Look only at me. She did, and his soft, steady gaze anchored her. At the foot of the stairs, the butler cleared his throat. Your Grace, the guests await your announcement. Saraphina stood front and center, smiling like a viper. Adrian led Eleanor to the center of the foyer. He raised a hand. Silence fell instantly. Thank you all for coming, he began. His voice carried effortlessly, warm yet commanding. There has been much speculation these past few days, rumors, assumptions, intrusions. His gaze flicked, ever so slightly, to Saraphina. I intend to end all confusion. Eleanor's pulse thundered. Adrian turned to her, taking both her hands. A collective gasp rippled through the room. He did not look away. Lady Eleanor Atwood is the woman I intend to marry. The gasps multiplied. Saraphina paled. Adrian continued, voice unwavering. I do not choose her out of duty or obligation. I choose her because she is kind, brave, intelligent. and the only woman I have ever wished to spend my life with." Eleanor blinked rapidly. Her vision blurred. He lifted her hand and pressed it over his heart. "I love her." The room exploded, stifled, cries, open-mouthed shock, muffled shrieks. Saraphina swayed like she might faint. Eleanor went still. He loved her. For a heartbeat she had no air. Then she whispered, barely audible, "Adrian." He smiled softly. "It's the truth." Someone in the crowd cried out, "What of the rumors?" Adrian's expression hardened. "They are lies. And your past attachments?" Another woman called meaningfully, eyes cutting toward Saraphina. Adrian didn't hesitate. "My past attachments are irrelevant," he said coolly. "Particularly those who mistake attention for affection." Saraphina flinched visibly. "It is time," Adrian announced, "that the ton places its scrutiny elsewhere. For today I declare before all of you that I am engaged to Lady Eleanor Atwood, and anyone who wishes to remain in my favor will welcome her as the future Duchess of Ravensbury." A collective murmur spread across the room as heads bowed, curtsies deepened, and expressions shifted from gossip to awe. Eleanor felt her knees weaken. Adrian leaned close and whispered, "Breathe, my heart." She inhaled shakily. He offered his arm. She took it. But Saraphina, white-fisted and trembling, stepped forward. "This is not over," she hissed quietly to Eleanor as they passed. "You do not deserve him. And I will make certain society remembers it." Eleanor's spine stiffened. But before she could respond, Adrian paused, turned his head slightly and said, "Saraphina, if you utter even one more word intended to harm her, I will have you removed from Ravensbury and barred from every event in my domain." Saraphina froze. Her eyes filled with fury and fear. Adrian straightened. "Consider this your final warning." He guided Eleanor away as Saraphina stood silent and trembling. As they reached the adjoining parlor, the door closed softly behind them. Eleanor exhaled a shaking breath. You said you loved me," she whispered. Adrian cupped her face, his gaze molten and tender. "I meant every word." Her heart soared. Her lips parted. Whether to speak or kiss him, she didn't know. But in the corridor, faint but unmistakable, came the sound of Saraphina's enraged voice, and the name she whispered froze Eleanor's blood. Because Saraphina wasn't planning a rumor anymore. She was planning a ruinous attack, one involving someone from Eleanor's past, someone Eleanor had hoped never to face again. Saraphina's voice, sharp, venomous, echoed just outside the parlor. Eleanor froze mid-breath. Adrian stilled as well, his hand still on her cheek, his eyes narrowing with protective instinct. Saraphina hissed to someone unseen, "Find him immediately. If he sets foot on this estate, the Duke will have no choice but to cut her loose." Eleanor's blood turned to ice. Him. No, 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 not him. Adrian opened the parlor door a fraction, just enough to glimpse the corridor, and hear more clearly. A footman stood before Saraphina, visibly uncomfortable. "My lady, are you certain? His reputation is unpleasant." Saraphina smiled coldly. "Exactly why he will be useful. Lady Eleanor Atwood prides herself on virtue. How charming it will be when society learns she once had a most compromising understanding with a notorious rake." Eleanor's stomach twisted violently. Adrian's head snapped toward her. "What is she talking about?" he murmured, voice low and deadly. Eleanor swallowed hard. "It was years ago," she whispered, "before my father fell ill. Before everything changed. I was 18 and foolish, and he was." Saraphina's voice cut through again. "Bring Mr. Lawrence Hale here today. Drag him if you must. I want him standing before the Duke by evening." Eleanor's breath left her in a rush. Lawrence Hale, the rogue who had left her humiliated, whose false promises had nearly destroyed her reputation once. A man who now apparently wanted something in exchange for silence, and Saraphina knew exactly how to use him. Adrian shut the door gently, then turned to Eleanor, his expression a mixture of fury and fierce concern. "Eleanor," he whispered, stepping toward her, "why didn't you tell me?" She shook her head, voice tight with shame. "It was a mistake, a foolish attachment. He courted me to access my father's connections. When father fell ill and could no longer elevate him, Lawrence dropped me overnight, and then spread rumors implying I had given him more than my attention. Adrian's jaw clenched so hard a muscle ticked. And society believed him? Some did, she whispered. Enough that I spent months afraid someone would confront me at a ball. Father confronted him. There was nearly a duel. But Lawrence left the country. I hoped I would never see him again. She covered her face with trembling hands. This will ruin everything, she breathed. Your announcement today, your declaration. If Lawrence arrives here, Saraphina will twist it into scandal beyond repair. Adrian took her wrists gently, lowering her hands from her face. Look at me. She did, her breath quivering. His voice came low and steady. You are not the one who should feel shame, but no. His grip tightened just a fraction, grounding her. A man lied to you, manipulated you, and then slandered you when he did not get what he wanted. That is his shame, not yours. Her throat constricted. He cupped her cheek again, thumb brushing away the tear that escaped. And I will not allow him, or Saraphina, to harm you. But Adrian, she whispered, if Lawrence speaks publicly, I do not care. The vehemence in his tone startled her. I will not let a snake from your past dictate our future. He exhaled, anger simmering beneath the controlled surface. I will go to Saraphina myself, and as for Mr. Hale, if he steps onto Ravensbury soil with malicious intent, I will see him removed. Her eyes widened. Removed? Adrian, you cannot challenge him or... He leaned close, voice a whisper against her ear. Eleanor, I would raise the entire dukedom to the ground before I let anyone destroy you. Her breath caught, half fear, half fierce, overwhelming affection. He pulled back, brushing a soft kiss against her temple. But first, he said, we need to know precisely what Saraphina plans. Adrian didn't wait. He strode from the parlor with the lethal grace of a man who had inherited power and knew how to wield it. Eleanor followed, heart racing. They found Saraphina near the main staircase, issuing orders to a maid who looked seconds from crying. Saraphina, Adrian said, voice like steel wrapped in velvet. She turned, and went rigid at his expression. Your Grace, she stammered, forcing a brittle smile. I was just... Spare me the lies, he said. I heard what you intend. She blanched. Adrian stepped closer, and every guest in the foyer wisely drifted away. Tension rippled through the air. You will send no messages, Adrian said coldly. You will summon no man from Lady Eleanor's past, and if Lawrence Hale appears here, I will know he came at your invitation. Saraphina swallowed. Your Grace, I only thought you should know the truth about the woman you... The truth? Adrian barked out a humorless laugh. You use that word as if you've ever cared about it. His gaze sharpened to a blade. Listen closely. Eleanor's past is hers. If you meddle in it, if you attempt to weaponize it, I will see you shunned from every house in London. Not even your father's influence will shield you. Saraphina trembled, eyes glossy with fury. She is beneath you, she hissed softly. And when society sees what she is... What she is, Adrian said, stepping closer until she backed away, is 10 times the woman you will ever be. Saraphina gasped as though struck. Adrian didn't spare her another glance. He turned, offering his arm to Eleanor. Come, my heart, he said firmly. We have preparations to make. Eleanor took his arm, but her mind whirled. Saraphina's expression as they left, tight, calculating, sent a shiver down her spine, because Saraphina was not done, and Lawrence Hale would not need a written invitation. He wanted revenge, and he was already on his way. Lawrence Hale arrived before sunset. Eleanor felt the moment he stepped onto the estate, the same way one feels an old wound ache before the weather breaks. The air shifted, the servants whispered, and Adrian's jaw turned to granite. They met Lawrence in the smaller receiving room, a neutral ground chosen deliberately to avoid drawing attention. Lawrence swept in with a smirk and a flourish, as though making an entrance onto a stage. He was handsome in the way spoiled men often were, too polished, too proud, dressed in clothes that cost more than his honor. His gaze slid over Adrian first, measuring the Duke, then landed on Eleanor. Well, he drawled, I must say, you look radiant. Engagement becomes you. Eleanor didn't respond. Adrian positioned himself at her side, slightly in front of her, subtly shielding her. "State your purpose and be done with it." Lawrence's smile widened. "Straight to business. Very well." He sauntered closer, hands clasped behind his back. "Your Grace, you deserve to know the truth about your bride-to-be." Adrian's brow rose. "Do enlighten me." Eleanor tensed, but Adrian's hand brushed her lower back, reassurance meant for her alone. Lawrence gave a theatrical sigh. "Years ago, Lady Eleanor and I were intimately acquainted." Eleanor sucked in a breath. Adrian didn't blink. Lies tend to roll more smoothly off the tongue when spoken without hesitation. Lawrence faltered. Adrian continued, voice like a blade. "Because if you had indeed compromised her, I assure you, your body would not have survived long enough to stand before me." Silence fell. Lawrence's smirk flickered. Eleanor stared at Adrian, stunned by the quiet ferocity in his defense. Lawrence recovered and shrugged lightly. "Believe what you will, but society loves scandal, especially when whispered by a man charming enough to be believed." Adrian stepped forward slowly, controlled, dangerous. "Is that why you came?" he asked. "To peddle false rumors? Or did someone pay you to do so?" Lawrence stiffened, too quickly. Eleanor saw it, Saraphina. Adrian saw it too. "Ah," he murmured. "So there is a puppeteer." Lawrence bristled. "I serve no one." "No," Adrian agreed. "You serve your greed, which means your loyalty can be bought as easily as your dignity." Lawrence flinched. Eleanor finally found her voice. "What do you want, Lawrence?" He turned to her, expression softening with something like nostalgia. But beneath it she saw calculation. "I want what you owe me," he said. "I owe you nothing, don't you?" he countered. "You ruined me." Eleanor stared at him, stunned. "You spread lies about me. You used my father, then discarded me. Your ruin is your own doing." Lawrence's eyes hardened. "And you think Ravensbury society will see it that way? That they will choose your word over mine?" Adrian stepped between them. "No," he said quietly. "They will choose my word. And I will tell them precisely what you are. A desperate man clinging to the scraps of his own infamy." Lawrence's bravado cracked. Adrian continued coldly. "Leave Ravensbury within the hour. If you attempt to slander Lady Eleanor again, I will ensure you are barred from every gentleman's club, estate, and invitation list in England. You will become a ghost in society, a forgotten nuisance. And that is me being merciful." Lawrence swallowed. Adrian's voice dropped lower. "If you wish to test how far my mercy extends, I invite you to stay." Lawrence broke. I understand," he muttered, backing away. "No need to be dramatic, Your Grace. I will go." He turned, gripping the doorframe briefly with white knuckles before disappearing down the corridor. Eleanor let out a long, trembling breath. It was over, truly over. Adrian turned to her, softening immediately. "You're safe now. Because of you," she whispered. "No," he said, touching her cheek gently. "Because you deserve safety." Her eyes stung. "And now," he murmured, "the rest of our future is ours to claim, not haunted by your past or mine." The formal engagement ball was held the next evening. Not the announcement forced by rumor. Not a hasty declaration in front of gossiping peers. A celebration. Eleanor walked into the ballroom on Adrian's arm, the chandeliers glittering above them like starlight caught in crystal. Music swelled. Guests turned, not with judgment, but admiration. No whispers, no scandal, no lurking shadows, just them. As they reached the center of the floor, Adrian turned to her. Eleanor. Her heart fluttered wildly. He went down on one knee. The ballroom erupted in gasps. Her hands flew to her mouth. "Yesterday's announcement," he said softly, "was born of truth but done in haste. You deserve more than that. You deserve a choice." Her breath broke. "Eleanor Atwood," he continued, voice thick with emotion. "I love you, fiercely, foolishly, endlessly. Will you marry me not because duty demands it, but because your heart chooses me as mine has chosen you?" Tears spilled down her cheek. She didn't hesitate. "Yes," she whispered. Then louder, clearer, brighter. "Yes." Adrian rose, capturing her in an embrace as the ballroom erupted in applause. He kissed her, softly at first, then with deep, unrestrained passion that silenced every other sound. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "You have made me the happiest man in England. And you," she breathed, "have given me a happiness I thought beyond my reach." Epilogue. 1 year later, spring sunlight bathed Ravensbury Gardens in gold. Eleanor, now the Duchess of Ravensbury, walked through blooming hedges, with her hand resting gently on her rounded belly. Adrian followed closely behind, though he'd deny he hovered. "You should sit," he murmured. "I'm pregnant, not porcelain." "You are both," he countered, kissing her cheek. She laughed, and the sound echoed warmly over the gardens. Saraphina did not attend the wedding. Lawrence Hale fled the country again, and the Tawns soon discovered they preferred praising a love story to weaving false scandals. Eleanor stopped beneath the rose arbor, turning to Adrian as he wrapped his arms around her waist. "Do you ever regret asking me to pretend to be your fiancée?" she teased. He smirked. "Not when it led to you becoming my wife." "Your one condition," she murmured, recalling the night everything changed. He leaned close, breath warm against her ear. "That you give me everything you are." "And you," she whispered, "gave me everything in return." He kissed her deeply as the roses swayed around them, a duke and his duchess, bound by choice, protected by love, and accompanied soon by the soft cries of the heir they awaited. Their story, once forged in pretense, had become a life built on truth, a future neither would ever trade. The end. Hey everyone, thanks for watching. If you loved it, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more amazing content. Drop a comment with your favorite moment, and I'll see you in the next one.